Anxiety isn't who you are. It's just the way that your mind and body have been running the program that was installed early on for whatever various reason. And those loops can be changed.
Yes. Welcome back to the Mind Change Podcast. I'm your host, Heather McKean. Please take a moment to like, subscribe, download, and share these episodes. They really help us to create the kind of content you want to hear and reach as many people as possible. Today, we're diving into one of the most common struggles that we see in our clients and around the world: anxiety. Clinically, anxiety is defined as excessive, persistent worry or fear that interferes with daily activities. It's more than just feeling nervous before a big event. It often includes physical symptoms like restlessness, racing thoughts, difficulty concentrating, sleep problems, sweaty palms, muscle tension, and panic attacks. When those symptoms last for weeks or months and they disrupt your ability to function, medicine then calls it an anxiety disorder. But here's the reality. Anxiety is everywhere. Nearly 1 in 5 US adults had a diagnosable anxiety disorder in the past year. And in 2022, about 18.2% of all adults reported anxiety symptoms just in the past 2 weeks. So over 40 million adults in this country are living with an anxiety disorder right now. And that's just the reported numbers. I'm sure it is far higher. And yet, despite the therapists, medications, tools, counseling, mindfulness apps, the numbers just keep climbing. The more we invest in the current system, the worse the problem seems to get. And here is the most alarming part. This isn't just about overwhelmed adults anymore. Among kids aged 3 to 17, roughly 11% already have a diagnosed anxiety condition. And among adolescents, nearly 1 in 5 say that they've experienced persistent anxiety in the past 2 weeks. So it's one thing for us as adults to struggle. It's another thing entirely when our children are suffering this badly. We were supposed to be the generation that solved this. We're more aware. We have more tools. We're destigmatizing all of this. And yet, if we're losing the battle ourselves, how can we possibly even think about changing it for the next generation? That's why today we're going to maybe reframe everything that you think you know about anxiety. Because what if anxiety isn't something that you have, but something you do? To help dive deeper into this topic, I'd like to welcome back my co-host, Kent McKean. Welcome.
Thanks. Glad to be here. Glad to be back. And yeah, I'm glad to be on for this episode because it is a really important topic. It has become, anxiety in and of itself has become so prevalent in the world. I would say in the majority of the discovery calls that I have, someone is talking about some form of anxiety surrounding whatever the thing is, or maybe it's just anxiety in general, but it's panic, anxiety, fear. Like this is a really prevalent thing today. It's almost like so prevalent that it's become normalized. And yet I will tell you that for anyone who has experienced anxiety, it doesn't feel normal. I mean, it's very like, it's a rough thing to be doing and creating and having and all of these things in our body, right? It can be very crippling. So to understand this a little bit better, because you said something that some people might just be like, just a moment ago, you said people don't have anxiety, which people that are have, anxiety disorders or are diagnosed might argue with you, but you said people don't have anxiety, they do anxiety. And so again, most people who are listening to this who feel very out of control with their anxiety, it's they might feel like, well, I'm not doing it. Like, I'm not trying. It's not there. I'm not trying to do this. This is just what happens when X, Y, or Z or A, B, C comes into play. And so could you explain the difference between anxiety and like just fear itself?
Yes. This is one of the most important distinctions that we need to make, because fear and anxiety are not the same thing, though they can tend to feel similar in the body. Because fear is our body's healthy survival response to an immediate real danger, right? If you step into the street and a car comes barreling toward you, then the amygdala, the brain's fear center, activates instantly. So adrenaline floods your system, your muscles tense, your heart pounds, and hopefully you leap to safety. That's fear doing its job. Anxiety, on the other hand, is your body reacting as if there's a threat, even when there isn't one. So neuroscience shows that anxiety is primarily driven by a completely different structure. So just a tad bit of technical jargon here. The bed nucleus of the stria terminalis, more frequently called the BNST, that's where anxiety is originating from. So while the amygdala responds to clear and present danger, the BNST is a bit of a maladaptive process there, because it keeps you in a state of anticipation. So it keeps you scanning, predicting, bracing for what might happen.
Okay. To become extremely non-technical, if anybody has seen Inside Out 2, you will know that fear is one entity and anxiety is a completely different entity in the brain or the body. Now, of course, that's,
we should do a whole podcast episode, like breaking down Inside Out.
I know. They're amazing, actually,
Yeah.
whoever created that. Okay, but fear says, let me get this straight. Fear says that danger is here. Like right now, something bad is happening right here. Anxiety, from what you're saying, says the danger might be out there somewhere at some point, maybe, what if?
Exactly. And here's the kicker. So your body doesn't actually know the difference. Your body. So whether you're facing a car speeding toward you, or just imagining losing your job, or breaking up with a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or being embarrassed, or, getting in a car accident while you drive, your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, again, what we call the HPA axis, fires off the same cascade of stress chemistry. So perceived danger, real danger, same chemistry. So that means cortisol, norepinephrine, and adrenaline, they're all going to surge through your system. And these chemicals were designed for short bursts of survival, like running away from a lion or a tiger or a bear, fighting off danger. But when these chemicals are released day after day, right, with what happens with anxiety, it's scanning and it's seeing and it's constantly looking for imagined threats. And those chemicals, which were meant to help you in the beginning, to mobilize you, just keep pumping low level, and they begin to harm you. Because chronic anxiety does not create good chemicals in your body. It creates depletion. Cortisol suppresses your immune system. Elevated norepinephrine and adrenaline keeps you hypervigilant, edgy, exhausted. So then your sleep gets disrupted. It affects your digestion. And then your brain literally starts to rewire itself to expect danger, even when there isn't any present. And worse, starts to find danger when there might not really be danger. So it's starting to create chaos, drama, danger, and feelings when there isn't any, because it's giving your brain something to do. So here's the big paradigm shift. Fear mobilizes you for real survival. Anxiety paralyzes you in false survival. So think about fear protects the present. Anxiety robs you of the present. That's why I say anxiety is something you do. It's not an identity. It's not a virus or a germ that we catch, right? It's a maladaptive prediction loop, one that was rewired from your original wiring to this. So this is neuroplasticity at work, changing your brain to be wired for danger and see danger and feel danger and do danger when it wasn't wired for that in the beginning. So I guess the good news is that if your body learned this, you can also unlearn it.
Okay. So I hear what you're saying is the difference between fear, anxiety, and how there is a difference that happens in the brain and in the body. But for just a moment, let me push back, because I think possibly some of our listeners may be feeling this idea of like, yeah, but if I don't worry, or if the anxiety is not there or whatever, then I could be caught off guard. Like I'm just being concerned. I'm just making sure that everything's good for the future. If they didn't look over their shoulder, if they didn't look to the future of like, yeah, but planning like, but if this happens and this happens and happens, I need to prepare. If they didn't do that, then something bad might happen. And so they're actually protecting themselves. This is good for them, is what some people may say. So the question is like, how can I not be worried in this crazy world, right? Because there's so many things coming from your back, coming from front, from the sides. Like, it's almost like we need to worry.
Well, the interesting thing about that too is, how can I be like not worried in this crazy world? That right there is a perception. There's plenty of people living in this world who don't feel crazy, endangered, and it's not necessarily because of just where they are or who they are. It's a little bit about who they are, right? But this is so important, because this is the thing that most people who worry or have anxiety do and think.
Okay, let me just ask one more question on that. So if there are some people in the world that like aren't thinking that way, aren't feeling that way, and then there others are, doesn't that go back to my question of like, so some people have anxiety and some people don't have anxiety?
Right. Some people are not doing anxiety and some people are. And for very good reason.
Okay.
For very good reason. We were not designed to do anxiety. It is harmful. It's harmful. I just listened to this podcast the other day where this guy's like waxing poetic about his anxiety and how much it serves him, and it puts something out into the future, like a call into the future to be a better person. He must be doing his anxiety really different than most of the people I work with. For most of the people I work with, it is debilitating. It is crazy making. It's
exhausting. It's frustrating for a lot of people, because they just want to do like a simple task or be around a certain person or be able to live quote unquote normal in this world, and they can be crippled by it.
Yeah. So that's the paradox of all of this thing, is that for these people, as they're doing this kind of catastrophic thinking and they're what ifing, for them, they're turning this maladaption and they're consciously thinking that it's useful, that it's actually helping them, that it's protection. So there's a book by Dr. Russ Kennedy called Anxiety RX. He calls worry like a false friend, because worry gives the illusion of certainty in an uncertain world, right? So life feels uncertain, unpredictable, scary, unsafe. Here's the kicker, especially if you grew up in a home where you never knew what mood mom or dad would be in, or whether they were coming home, or whether you were going to be accepted one day and shunned the next, right? Worry becomes a coping mechanism at a pretty young age, because it's our brain's way of trying to control what it actually can't control. So here's the science of this. Every time you worry about a possible bad outcome, and then that outcome doesn't happen, your brain gets a little hit of dopamine. It's a relief.
It's like, like good thing I did that. That felt really good.
Yep. And it links the worry to the outcome. And dopamine is the same chemical that reinforces addictions. I think we all know that by now. So whether it's alcohol, gambling, scrolling, social media, it's working on our dopamine receptors. So worry begins to work just like an addictive drug. It gives you a hit of like, I survived. You think I survived, even though what you survived wasn't actually dangerous. It was an imagined disaster. So over time, your brain links worry with safety. So then you just keep doing it over and over and over again.
Okay, so you're saying that worry it ends up feeling protective, right? Because they're trying to bubble themselves against the possible future negative outcomes, right? But that it's not just protective, it's addictive.
Exactly.
So go a little bit more into that.
Well, it's kind of like drinking a beer to quench your thirst. If you haven't had anything to drink all day and you drink a beer, listen, for a moment, that feels better, right? But here's the thing, the beer doesn't actually hydrate you. It actually makes dehydration worse. And drink enough gives you a buzz and you don't think about it, and then you'll never listen to your body, right? So we're talking about the way worry feels in our body, because the anxiety feels bad, but it also at times feels good. Worry feels like it's preparing you for the future. But what it's actually doing is making your body more anxious and depleted. And then here's where we tie it back to mind change. Worry isn't random. It's not your brain just out of nowhere spinning stories. Worry actually functions like a distraction. It's a coping mechanism. It's a strategy your subconscious mind uses to avoid the deeper alarm that's happening in your body, the unresolved trauma, the childhood pain that you've not processed. So think of it like this. Your body is the alarm. It's screaming. It's yelling, hey, something's not right in here. Something feels unsafe. But instead of listening to that alarm, your brain makes up an elaborate what-if story. Because it's easier to obsess about whether you'll mess up in a presentation than to face like a raw memory of being humiliated by a parent's criticism at age 6. So the real problem isn't the worry itself. It's what the worry you think is protecting you from feeling. And until you address those unresolved memories, until you change the subconscious wiring, the worry loop will keep looping. And it's just like most addictions, this behavior spills over into other areas of your life.
And that's why you can't just stop worrying. That would be like telling an addict, just stop drinking, just stop shooting up, just stop smoking. Just
exactly.
It's like you can't just do it because your body is linked to all of these things. And so your brain and your body are like it's the addictive hit that you almost need with anxiety as well.
Just like drugs and alcohol, you think that it's keeping you safe, right? We don't think drugs and alcohol are usually keeping us safe, but it's keeping us safe from dealing with what's really going on.
Or not dealing with.
Yeah. And what's happening, and this is the kind of crucial science piece of it that's really important to understand, because what's happening when we're doing this is you're actually desensitizing yourself and your systems to actual danger. And you're trigger happying your awareness toward perceived danger. So in the long run, you are actually less safe. Because think about it. How many of us actually pay attention to a car alarm or even fire alarms anymore, right? If your fire alarm is going off, our first thought is
batteries running low.
And the amount of times we've done or seen people knock the thing down just to shut it up, right? We just want to shut the alarm up.
Yes.
We don't even consider that there might actually be a fire, right? It takes smelling smoke, feeling heat, scream, to be like, oh, wait, fire. Like we're just desensitized completely. They're more annoying than anything. But here's the thing. If a real theft, if someone was really stealing our car or a real fire were happening, we wouldn't be prepared because we wouldn't be listening to the proper alarm, right? If a real actual danger were present, we aren't utilizing that system very well anymore. So this maladaptive process begins to influence even the other people around us. Because I want to give you an example. So let's take, and sorry to focus on women, men can do this too, but let's take a mother, right, who worries and creates all these negative what if stories. And in doing that, because biology happens when we do things in our mind, biology happens. So you've got a mom, she's worrying, she's thinking through all these things, she's creating all these what if scenarios. Like, oh, God forbid you miss your curfew at night and mom's up, imagining 20 ways that you are dying, right? Like car accident, whatever. So she ends up with a dysregulated nervous system. That's what happens. Well, children learn regulation from co-regulating with their caregiver. So if mom's running around worrying, fussing, controlling, fear-mongering, all the while thinking that she's being loving or caring, she is actually teaching her children to have dysregulated nervous systems themselves.
Well, I mean, if that's the case, which we know it is, that children co-regulate and learn to regulate from their parents, and since the numbers of anxiety continue to go up in diagnoses, then it makes sense that it's just a cascade of skyrocketing numbers that we see in childhood anxiety, right? Because it's just continuing to be learned or co-regulated or passed down. So what you're saying with all of this is that the body is holding the alarm, right? And the mind ends up kind of spinning stories around it.
Yeah, like our conscious mind. That's
right.
Becomes the problem. That then becomes the problem in the body, right? So Dr. Kennedy, whose book I mentioned earlier, Anxiety RX, describes it like this. The body is, the alarm is in the body. The anxiety is the story the mind tells about the alarm. So mind change works because we don't just try to quiet the story. Right? We actually listen to the story. We're like, tell me more. What is that story saying? Where did that start? When's the first time you heard that, right? We go straight to the source. We resolve the alarm by re-encoding the memory that created the alarm in the first place.
Okay. But if anxiety is such an epidemic, right, which we're talking about here, isn't that why then medications exist, right? Things like SSRIs or anti-anxiety drugs or whatever else. Wouldn't that fix, if this really is just like chemicals and dopamine and hits and all these different things happening, wouldn't that fix the chemical imbalance with the anxiety and manage whatever people are, what you're calling, doing?
Okay. Very important. This is where I want to be very direct. I've talked about this before. And this is not opinion. This is fact. The entire chemical imbalance theory, the idea that anxiety and depression and mental health stuff comes from some sort of deficiency in serotonin or some other neurotransmitter, has not ever been scientifically proven. It was a marketing story. It is not a medical fact. There's plenty, if you know how to read the research papers and you can swim through all of the Google training out there, it's very, very clear there is no such thing as a chemical imbalance.
I mean, you won't find that if you type it into Google necessarily, but if you can get into the research papers and all of that.
Yes. I have a whole weekend workshop about this actually. But it's an important question because pharmaceuticals are the number one treatment approach to anxiety. I mean, we have loads of meds and they are handed out easily, readily, like candy. Your GP or your nurse practitioner can prescribe them on your very first visit. In fact, you can go and get them online without ever being seen in person. I mean, if people really knew what was happening here, that's absolute insanity. If people knew the actual data on the effectiveness of these drugs versus their side effects, it would actually seem criminal to hand them out like they do. But because it is the most common approach, I think it's worth breaking down a little bit. So let's talk about that. Let's actually talk about what's happening with some of the most common classes of medications. So those would be your SSRIs, your selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. That's going to be drugs like Prozac, Zoloft, Lexapro, Paxil, Celexa. I know there's a lot more. So here's the thing about these drugs. They were studied for short-term relief in all of their clinical trials, usually 6 to 12 weeks. In real life, people are usually kept on them for years, sometimes decades, if not their life. And I did my own dance with these things. You're actually told by the doctor it could take 4 to 6 weeks for it to even be able to start to show changes. And that's usually as long as they were researched for. So they were not designed to be long-term treatments for anxiety, and they weren't studied for that either. So what they have found is over time, many people have their symptoms return, or they plateau, or things get worse. It's very common. And then you go through try this drug and the whole up your medication, down your medication. It's a complete and utter circus. And here's the other thing. Coming off of them is notoriously difficult. There can be withdrawal, agitation, dizziness, something called like brain zaps, and then rebound anxiety. So there are huge rates of relapse after discontinuing medication.
Okay, well, let me ask you something about that then. If you're saying that there's proven evidence that, SSRIs and different things are not actually the thing that's going to be changing, or more the chemical imbalance isn't a thing, and then, these SSRIs and how they're used, but then they're coming off of them, and there's some sort of you called relapse, or some sort of like a chemical reaction, right, in their brain and body. So what is it doing if not helping?
Well, it's synthetically signaling these things.
Okay.
That's the problem is it's synthetic, and we're taking a synthetic approach to a very real embodied problem. So these things serve to kind of numb and dull and reduce the scream. But the scream is important. The scream needs to be there. And so the problem is that the subconscious patterns that are setting off the alarm, that are holding the alarm, they're not getting addressed. Okay. So the anxiety has to come back. It has to be listened to, right? So there's this other class of drugs called SNRIs. It's the serotonin norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors. That's going to be like your Effexor, Cymbalta, Pristiq. So these affect both serotonin and norepinephrine. Now, here's the theory. So to kind of get into what you're talking about. In theory, norepinephrine can boost alertness. Okay. So you've got this whole serotonin thing. So we've got this numbing effect, but then we've got norepinephrine, which is supposed to boost alertness, because so many people complain about feeling numb and dead on these SSRIs and everything. So you've got this kind of like depress and spike kind of happening in your chemicals synthetically, right? But the problem with spiking norepinephrine is it can increase things like feelings of anxiety, jitteriness, heart palpitations, all of these different things.
Well, it would be like trying to get rid of the problem and bring the problem at the same time, like get rid of alertness and bring alertness.
So it's trying to calm down the body's natural alarm system.
Right.
And then increasing more things that your body is feeling because of the side effects of the drug.
Hmm.
So the body's also reacting to the side effects of the drug, but also still screaming the original alarm. And now you've got a cacophony of more symptoms.
Okay.
And just like SSRIs, the SNRIs were not studied for long-term use. And withdrawal is harsh and relapse is common. And then we get into benzodiazepines, benzos. So this is drugs like Xanax, Ativan, Klonopin. Okay. These are some of the most widely prescribed anti-anxiety drugs because something happens fast in someone's system. There's a fast response. So people report within 15 to 30 minutes, they feel calmer or maybe panic subsides. And so it looks like anxiety has been fixed.
Mm.
But here's what's really happening. They don't get into the programming or the unresolved theories or driving, even accessing or listening to the alarm. What they do is they flood the brain's GABA receptors. So gamma aminobutyric acid is the body's primary inhibitory transmitter. So it's our body's natural brake pedal. Okay, GABA. Benzos amplify GABA's effect. So what that does is it sedates neural activity. It actually slows down the whole nervous system. And so it feels like the alarm is going quiet. But what it's really doing, it's like stomping on the brake while the gas is also being stomped on.
Okay.
That's what it's doing for the system. And so the overwhelm of that, the brain actually adapts really quickly. So the GABA receptors start to downregulate. And what that means is our body's natural brake system gets burned out, really kind of think of it like a car. And so then the natural GABA production starts to downregulate. So we start to produce less GABA naturally, which means we are going to need more of the drug. Or you're going to feel funky, like things are not going to go well at all. So you need more and more of the drug. Well, benzos are highly addictive. There's a major dependence on them. So then if you stop them suddenly, a lot of stuff can happen. The rebound anxiety, seizures, life-threatening withdrawal symptoms. There is also so much research out there about long-term use. It impairs memory, cognition, coordination. Studies also show that chronic use is linked to dementia and accidents, of all things. And worst of all, long-term benzo use actually, this is proven, this is science, this is the research, it actually increases baseline anxiety. So your baseline of doing anxiety worsens. So coming back down means you're going to come back down to a higher level of anxiety than you were doing before. And then the brain's natural calming system gets weaker. So then you get more dependent on the pill. So like this is the fraudulent thing. I don't know how to say it. It gets me a little bit. I'm going to breathe. People think because there's that initial drop in anxiety that the pill is working. But what you're doing is chemically castrating your nervous system. You're sedating it. You're muffling the alarm. The fire alarm is still going off. There is still subconscious wiring and programs running that need to be changed for someone to have a healthy, happy, life and nervous system. But those are not being touched. They're being shut up. They're being castrated. They're being sedated. They're being just told to sit still, shut up, and, look the other way, which is frankly how a lot of us got there in the first place, right? I personally think benzos have very little good to offer if we compare them to the consequences. Okay, quick relief, yes, but at what cost? A cost that compounds the very problem that they promised to solve. This is the place where I stop and say, okay, now let me be really fair. I am never coming from a place of wanting to demonize medicine for the sake of demonizing medicine. I want to look at the research, right? I want to look at what's the thing that is lacking, what happens when we put this in the body. Does it work? What are the costs? Like, we have to do that kind of analysis. For some people, medications can serve as a bridge. The majority of people are really, really wrapped up in our, I'd like to call it healthcare, but it's really more sick care system. Really wrapped up in job, insurance, money, like all of it is wrapped up into you must go to a doctor to find any relief, and the doctor's only real options are medications. And if you're so overwhelmed that you can't perform or function or get out of bed, then a short-term prescription might give you enough relief to seek deeper healing. That's valid, and that should be said. But we get this other side of it is they don't have answers out there. The doctors have the medications. They're being told by the pharmaceutical companies that this is the answer. And this is the training doctors get around it, right? So they're giving the medications, wanting to help people. I'm not trying to vilify doctors either. But as a culture, we've outsourced mental healing to a pharmaceutical model that doesn't address the cause. And the numbers prove it. And anxiety rates keep rising. And then the other option is therapy, talk therapy, which the numbers are also abysmal. So I kind of get that. Like, the problem is there's not been answers. And the two answers we have, it's grim. Mm-hmm. And so we're stuck. We're stuck in a model. We're not solving the problem. We're just, for now, numbing it. But until we address the subconscious loops that do the anxiety, no pill will ever bring lasting peace. And from what we've seen, most of the time, talk therapy doesn't either.
Okay. There's a lot there.
Not to be grim, because this does have a happy ending.
And scene.
No.
Okay. So far, we've looked at the science and how the brain circuitry, the chemistry, even, the way medications, in one sense, can numb or shut down our natural alarm system without actually fixing the root, right? And this is sort of the space that, I would love in just a moment that we kind of dig deeper, because we've talked about, okay, this doesn't work, this doesn't work, this doesn't work. And of course, anxiety doesn't just show up out of nowhere, right? In adulthood, it's formed from something earlier. Like it's a symptom of the building blocks that are happening. It's learned, it's wired, and often it's wired very, very early on. And so, when I work with clients, again, at the beginning, I was saying there's a lot of clients that I work with where anxiety is just a piece of what they're holding, right? And so I find typically anxiety can be traced back to the environment that they grew up in. Not always. Sometimes it's an environment they get into a little bit later in life, but there is something about the environment that can really affect the way that someone's brain and body intake safety or lack thereof, right? And so maybe for some people, there was a piece that they needed that was interrupted a lot, constantly. Or maybe for others, it seemed calm, like things seemed okay. And the next day it was chaos, right? So there's this like going back and forth, which is actually quite dysregulating, especially for a child. And for other people, it might not have been such a external environment of chaos and this. It can also be an internal self-criticism, which is quite chaotic and quite unsafe, right?
Yeah.
It can be a judgment that is either felt toward or inward. It can be a feeling of being controlled so much that it wasn't safe to just like be themselves or be whatever. There's a lot of different things out there. Sometimes it's due to parents who maybe were absent emotionally, or in their own, like we said at the beginning, like they had their own dysfunction of anxiety and different things, and that was co-regulated too. So all of these things, if someone grows up carrying, especially someone else's anxiety, like if it's not even theirs, right? And then they kind of like learn, this is how we do, this is what, or maybe the parent's going through something and they feel the need to take things on, kind of like the mother, that you were talking about, who like, was always worrying or whatever. Maybe even during pregnancy, there's the worry, there's like neurochemicals that are passed in and down. Like there's a lot of things there. So these environments, however it's done, whether it's super external, internal, childhood, even like another environment after childhood, whatever it is, the one thing that they all have in common is that it robs the sense of safety, and especially for a child, right? If we're talking about childhood. So in a way, for children, often who are doing anxiety, either as a child or later on, they are learning to guard themselves all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, think about what happens in those moments. Okay. A child's always learning, right? That's why we say we're all programmed, because we need to be programmed. Children have to be programmed by their loved ones, their environment, or we wouldn't be able to exist in the world. So if you've got a child's nervous system from any one of these various environments that you talked about is learning, like, I can't predict what's coming next, or I can't trust the world to stay safe, or, I always have to be looking out for danger or scanning constantly. Well, that scanning, that anticipatory kind of feeling of danger, that actually becomes the blueprint for their nervous system. And that's the nervous system that takes them into adulthood. So, like, I see various patterns in clients that come in with, major anxiety issues. And one of them is like people pleasing as protection. Like, that's the being on guard of never wanting anyone to be unhappy with you, or, criticize you, or, always staying in the place of being okay with people.
Are you talking about me?
Nobody in particular. I'm just saying this can be common.
No, that was
you
definitely
don't really do a lot of anxiety.
No, not anymore. But that was a form of anxiety that I would never have called anxiety.
Sure.
Like growing up, even like the beginning stages of not just beginning stages of our marriage, but yes, the anxiety at the beginning was all of my stomach issues and all of that. But over time, it really was like, okay, just need to make sure Heather's not upset. I need to make sure she's not mad. I need to make sure that she's okay, that we're okay. If she's okay, I'm okay. Like trying to co-regulate to you. But the way I was co-regulating to you was to make sure you're okay first. And so that is the people-pleasing sort of coping mechanism that was trying to keep me safe.
Yes.
Right.
And that often comes when either it's perceived or it's said, oftentimes it's perceived, that if you were to have been your authentic little boy self or teenage self, like if you would have been authentic, who you really were, it would have led to judgment or punishment or isolation.
Yeah. Or like being you in your nature isn't good.
Right.
Being you in your nature or yourself or your authentic whatever isn't good. You need to be this way instead.
Yes. So then we learn to present a facade.
Yeah.
And then, but if someone, you're wearing the mask or the costume, if you will, the facade. Now, if someone criticizes the costume, the mask, it hurts less than it would if people saw the real you and criticized the real you.
Well, and when we do that, we end up taking so many steps away from like masking the mask that then masks the other masks. And we actually are so dissociated from who we really are.
Yes.
And then it's just about pleasing other people and doing what I think I should do in the world and what other people think I should do and all of that. We lose ourselves. I think I actually talk a little bit about that in our book that we co-authored. But yeah.
Yeah. And then of course you don't feel safe. That's not safe. It's not safe to outsource your worth, your value, your acceptance to other people around you.
Mm-hmm.
So of course, then you're not safe. And then of course, anxiety starts to come, right? That another thing is that can come from that, or along with it, is that hyper attunement to others. I know that that's the way I existed, with physical abuse and drug and alcohol abuse in the home. And there can be you didn't grow up this way. Where I grew up, there could be very, very explosive, even possibly mortally dangerous interactions in the home. Then you become hyper aware of other people.
And in the hyper awareness, whether it's like, I need to be hyper aware so that you're not mad at me, or I need to be hyper aware so you don't explode at me. Oftentimes, when something is amplified, something that should be natural of like attunement, when it's amplified to hyper attunement or hyper awareness, it's actually not seen through the correct lens.
Exactly.
It's not felt through the correct lens. It's felt through a filter of amplification.
Yeah. And mine became about love. Like, I'm not lovable if I mess up. Like if I trigger something or don't protect in some way or something like that, it became about love, right? And then you learn to overanalyze every word, every tone. You're like searching for clues about, am I safe? Am I worthy? Am I loved? Are they safe? And it gets maladaptive. And so then, no, I'm not loved. No, I'm not chosen, because your filters, like you were saying.
Yeah. And mine wasn't so much about like love. It was about like freedom and am I okay? Like, am I cool to just be me? Which is like being free, right? Like, and so am I free to just be okay in this situation, in that situation, unless you're upset? And so it's, yeah.
Yeah. And on the other side of it, it can be like for some children, I also resonate with this one, but like if you were needed too much as a child. So this can come in a couple different forms. I was needed because there needed to be some sort of stability or, safety. I needed to be okay because nobody else seemed to be. There can also be the other side, when you're like, when there's some codependency happening and, you've got like a mother who dotes and, maybe is a little overly connected. Her identity is a little overly connected in the child. And it can feel like their emotional stability relies on you. And that is super overwhelming for a child's system.
Yeah, because no child should have to take on the role of responsibility or emotional well-being of a parent, right?
Yes. And so then as an adult, then the idea of responsibility, they trigger panic. Like being responsible for other people triggers that same way of feeling like you had to be overly responsible for, like if your dad blew up and then it kind of came back on you, you did this to me, you made me mad. Then you're like, oh gosh, I'm the catalyst of that. Or if mom's upset and mom's crying and you hurt mom's feelings and, like this, then you're like, and she like spins out, you're, oh gosh, that was me. I did that. And you learn that as a child. Mm-hmm. And then it becomes like, oh, you're responsible for everybody's emotions all the time. That's intense.
Yeah.
And that creates a generalized feeling of anxiety. And then there's the thing of, mentioned this a little bit before, but this one's bigger and bigger. It's like absorbed anxiety. So this is where some children, they literally inherit the family's unprocessed anxiety. So I've worked with clients who could trace their panic all the way back to feeling their mother's anxiety in the womb. Like they really can go back there and feel it. Or
even before that, right? Like, right. Oh, like going back and feeling dad's anxiety, mom's anxiety, grandmother's anxiety, like whatever. And if they can access that within their own mind and body, then that means it's being held somewhere in their mind and body, even though it's about someone from their lineage.
Yes, absolutely. And then that shows up. And then another really common thing I see is growing up in a home where, now these are the homes where people are like, but I don't have childhood trauma. I had a great family and things were amazing. And yet I'm still like this highly, highly anxious person. This may be your story. You grew up where love equals worry. So the story is, I worry about you, to you, for you, because I love you. Like I worry because I care. So again, this is very common with women. And then when they become mothers, men can do it too. But it's often a learned behavior. Like somebody probably did it to them and called it love. But love isn't worry. Love is love. And the frequency that worry produces, what it produces in another person's body that then gets shared with another person, that feeling isn't nice. And if we're calling that love, that's actually really damaging. Because the mother says to the child, I worry because I love you. In essence, the dysregulation that you can sense and feel inside of me that doesn't feel good to the child, we're going to call that love. So children don't know how to question that. They trust the adult. So it really becomes their unconscious truth. And then these children grow up unconsciously looking for drama. And they will literally create situations, relationships, places, things that facilitate worry.
So that it can be perceived as love because they want to love.
And they want to show love.
Yeah.
So they create all these things to worry about. And I will tell you that leads to a lot of toxic relationships. So something else that we always try to consider when we talk about really anything, but anxiety is secondary gains. So anxiety, we have to acknowledge it feels good sometimes because we get that hit of dopamine, right? But it also can sound good because it serves a purpose. It's keeping you out of overwhelming responsibilities. Like if you're too anxious to go, you don't have to go and people, and peopling sometimes is hard. And so it could be like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm too anxious to go. And it can keep you from unwelcome or uncomfortable situations.
Yeah, or make you feel sick or make you feel overwhelmed or make you feel whatever to, again, going back to like protect you. But really it's just a maladaptive way of your body responding to something that shouldn't be there in the first place.
So where we see this super, super, super common is children in school. They get tummy aches. That is the first sign of anxiety. They're getting a tummy ache. They don't want to go to school. Now, oftentimes they won't say they don't want to go to school. They don't really fully understand. Maybe they're being bullied, but maybe not. Maybe their teacher said something mean. Maybe a friend hurt their feelings or whatever. Or maybe they're not fitting into the industrialized system that school is. And they don't have a way or platform to speak that. So their body does it for them. So they start to think about going to school. They start to think about what they're going to feel and see and hear. And their body does alarm. But they can't say I'm scared to go to school because they've been told there's nothing to be afraid of, or, you're safe there. It's safe there. Your friends are there. You have to go to school. I don't know. This was big when I was a kid. You have to go to school or you're going to go to jail. You'll be truant. You're going to go to jail. So go to school or go to jail. Oh my gosh. Those two options. School feels safer, but not safe, right? So you get tummy aches because it's to feel sick, you get to go to the nurse or you get to go home. So that's okay. But you can't say I feel nervous. I feel scared. It's scary that's just not the languaging children are taught to use.
Well, and if you were to tell a teacher or a counselor or a nurse any of those things, they'd be like, "Oh, okay. Well, it's okay. You're okay." And it almost like trying to verbalize a child out of the manifestation of anxiety symptoms that are created, rather than, okay, but this is real for the child due to the way that their alarm system's going off and how it's not been taken care of in a maybe well-mannered way at the home environment or how they grew up.
And so just like a tummy ache is a more socially acceptable response, children learn that, then we learn those things as adults. We carry those through as adults too. So we do anxiety as a more socially acceptable reason to avoid situations or people or things that feel unsafe. But the end result is the body keeps doing the anxiety long after the original threat is gone. So the nervous system is reacting to the ghosts of the past, right? Or the perceived horrible things that they've projected into the future.
Which I will remind our audience at the very beginning, fear is something happening now. Anxiety is something that happened then or in the future. It's different.
Totally
so
different.
Yeah,
it's perception. It's casting imagination and then feeling as if it's happening right now.
Right.
So what this does is anxiety keeps us out of the present moment. It's either in the stories of the past or the projections of the future.
Yeah.
And if we're not actually living in our body in the present moment, we are now not safe, not as safe as we could be.
And I will just bring back up what we were talking about a minute ago, like the way that anxiety was formed was forming like in me and how it was manifesting even in our relationship. Because I think this is important, is it wasn't like I was like, oh, I'm feeling so anxious right now. Like that wasn't how it was coming out. I would never have considered myself an anxious person. But the way it was coming out was really projecting from what I perceived as past negative experiences with you or with other people, that they're not happy with me or you're not happy with me. So then we're in a situation, and instead of being regulated for what's happening right now between you and me, if I felt any sort of dissonance, anything, then my natural unconscious state would be thinking about the future of like, I got to make sure that she doesn't get upset. I got to make sure that she's not unhappy. I have to, and obviously trailing backwards into like, because when this happened, because when that happened, right? These are all anxiety from the past and the future, perceived things that are going to happen or have happened, rather than like right here. And then I'm not present. And let me tell you, men, if you're listening to this, the one thing that will infuriate a woman more than anything else is a lack of presence. And so not being present is actually probably the thing that created the future outcome more than whatever was going on in the moment.
It was a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
And I want to highlight something right here because it's important and I don't want to forget to say it, but languaging is so important. It matters so much in life, but also in the work that we do. And very frequently I hear people say, my anxiety. Like, oh, I'm struggling with my anxiety. Oh, because of my anxiety, I couldn't do this. Because of my anxiety, I didn't, do that or whatever. What they don't understand is by speaking it out like that, they are unconsciously fusing all of the old memories, all of the old beliefs, all of the protective strategies. And they are now going from the out to the in. They actually become identity. And someone who has an identity of anxiety is in far worse shape than someone who realizes that they are doing anxiety once in a while.
Well, if it's an identity, then again, your brain and body need to subconsciously stay in alignment with what is quote unquote true.
Yes.
And so
that's confirmation bias.
Yeah, it will continue to happen. And even if something is not an anxiety, even if anxiety is not a feeling that's happening, like our brain will create a way to link this was anxiety. See, it's more anxiety. See, it's more. See, it's more. See, it's more. This is who I am.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So when we shift that language to something like the anxiety that I am doing right now, or, the anxiety that I used to do, what happens is that creates a distance. So it removes it from being our identity, and it makes the problem a behavior, right? Something that we learned, which is really important because it means that it can be unlearned. So I want to give like a client example. And of course, details changed because of privacy, but it's a common story that we see in sessions. So a client comes to me and she's describing what she would call crippling anxiety at work. Like she's successful in her career, but this has been going on for so long and it's gotten worse and worse that it's really, really affecting her now. And other people are starting to notice. It was like every time that she had to give a presentation or even speak up in a meeting, her body would significantly react. So started with like sweaty palms, racing heart, and then it migrated to like not being able to sleep for nights the week before something big was coming up.
Oh, so she had anxiety.
She was doing it good. And her mind would like spin all these what ifs, right? Like, what if I make a mistake? And what if they think I'm stupid? And then what if I completely embarrass myself and then I'll lose my job? And then if I lose my job, I won't be able to support my kids. And then my kids will get taken away. And then, whoosh, the way it goes. So on the surface level, it could have looked like a performance issue. Like, oh, maybe she's just nervous, right? But then when we dug a little bit deeper and got under it, we discovered that the real roots, of course, were in her childhood. So she in particular grew up with a father who, like when you hear his history, you sort of understand it, but he was highly critical. He was really hard on himself, came from a father who was really hard on him. And it came out where he would be really critical and really unpredictable. So whenever he would come home from work, she never knew what kind of mood that he would be in when he walked through the door. So some days he would be like warm and loving, but other days he would literally explode over the smallest thing, like how she stacked the dishes or whether she was done with her homework or even if she breathed too loudly at the dinner table at night. So her nervous system as a child learned that this is the message she perceived. So the nervous system does the same thing. It does anxiety, dysregulation, but the stories are sometimes different. Her story was, if I'm not perfect, I will be attacked. And so the strategy to become safe or to stay safe or survive in that was to anticipate his needs, scan for every possible danger, make sure that she never slipped up. So she would like envision, she would get home from school and then spend time envisioning like worst case scenarios if he were to come home, that like how she could stay out of his way or win back his love, or she would just be, so the whole time before he's coming home, she's considering him in these like blown up situations. And over time realizing that in the work, she realized he blew up a lot less in reality than she perceived him to. Like she was practicing so much him blowing up to try to stay safe in it that she had, as an adult, perceived that he was like that all the time, really. When we got into the work and did all of the sort of the rewiring and undoing, she came to that realization. But fast forward that into adulthood, every meeting, every presentation triggered that loop because it wasn't her boss she was seeing in the conference room. It was her father at the dinner table, but she was completely unaware of what was happening, right? So her body wasn't reacting to the present moment. She had a good relationship with her boss. She really felt very secure in her relationship with him. But when things would start to happen, she wasn't in the present moment. Like her nervous system was reacting to decades old stories and wiring. So the turning point for her in session was we didn't just tell her to breathe deep or think positive, right? Or dad was doing the best he could, reframe it. That would have been like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. Because like when we really go back and we open up all the subconscious memories, that stuff's there and it's real and it's like more than we originally realized. Not more bad, usually more good, but still it's all there. And then we find where the wiring began. So together we helped go back and update those nervous system, those memories, which then translated to her nervous system feeling different. Like we helped her recognize that the threat was over. She was no longer that little powerless girl, waiting for dad's reaction. And in fact, we were able to put her in contact with all of the times he was warm. And through doing that, the magic of mind change, it really taught him a better way through his daughter to deal with his father's criticism and his father's overreaction. And it healed a bunch of stuff and actually had a profound healing. She came in for performance anxiety and ended up healing a relationship with her father that she didn't realize. Love those mind change side effects, right? So what we had to do is really like actually go and listen to the alarm, quiet the alarm. Mm-hmm. And that stopped the loop. But, and this is what we see all the time. And I find really fascinating because she had done a lot of other stuff. She'd done somatic stuff. She'd done cognitive behavioral therapy. She'd done these things, but she felt like they didn't really work. But so when we did all of the mind change work, then the more body-based tools like breath work and mindfulness, they really started to stick and they helped change her entire life, right? Because the mind was no longer telling the body you're in danger.
That's cool. So the anxiety in this story, what you're talking about, wasn't really about the meetings, obviously, right? This one's it's about the childhood loop still running in the background.
Always. I mean, listen, even if you're in a really terrible work environment and the boss is a jerk and you're getting yelled at, and I mean, obviously if you're reacting to that, yes, but very frequently things like really, really bother us and we get hijacked because of previous things that this reminds us of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So often, the anxiety is not about what's happening now. It's about what's already happened. And then the meaning our subconscious assigned to that. So once we change the meaning, then the present finally becomes safe.
Yeah. So in Mind Change, we're trying to help people understand that, these conditions, symptoms, diagnoses, whatever the issues are, they're not, the person is not doing something wrong, right? It's not like, oh, you're doing anxiety, what's wrong with you? Oh, you're doing, whatever, what's wrong with you? It's not about them doing anything wrong. They're actually doing things exactly right, exactly the way that their brain, nervous system, body, like everything, the way it's wired, the way it was taught, the way it learned, they're doing it right with their current programming. Obviously not optimal programming, but definitely doing it with the program they have. So we said before that another way to think about anxiety is that it's a message.
Absolutely. So I like to frequently use the metaphor of like a child, a toddler throwing a tantrum in a grocery store, right? The child isn't bad. And the tantrum isn't random. Somewhere along the line, this kid didn't feel that they were being heard or understood in what they were trying to communicate. And out of frustration, they likely threw a fit. And then at some point, and probably quickly, they would receive their parents' attention, albeit negative attention. But see, the thing is, children don't often distinguish between good and bad at such young ages. For children, attention is a life and death situation. So however they get it, they're going to get it. Over time, the tantrum becomes the easiest and fastest way to get the attention when their needs are not being met. So anxiety works basically in the same way. It's your body's immature attempt to say, something isn't right. Please pay attention to me. Now, what do most of us do with a tantrum thrown by a toddler? I mean, maybe in the best of it, we just ignore it and hope it goes away. Or more frequently, if it's happening in the grocery store, we try to like shut it down quickly, like just to get relief. Here's a candy, here's a, whatever.
Or just a stop, like,
right.
Or you're going to get in trouble if you don't, right? Yeah, all of that.
Or run and leave, the store. And honestly, that's exactly how we treat anxiety. We avoid it, we run from it, we numb it, we give it candy, we give it substances to distract it, screens, we medicate to silence the noise. But the need behind it, it's still going unmet. And here's what's fascinating is that the need usually isn't about the present moment at all for adults. It's about something much earlier. So the wound from the childhood, or a moment when peace was shattered, or a time when our emotions weren't safe. Anxiety is our subconscious saying, hey, remember me? Remember this thing? You never resolved it. I still need your attention.
So you're saying that like when people medicate anxiety, it's sort of like giving a toddler a pacifier, and it does perhaps sometimes quiet it for a time, but the underlying need of whatever the toddler was needing in that moment, or whatever the body or we needed in that moment, is not actually met.
Yes, because what normally happens when we ignore like a toddler throwing a tantrum on the ground?
No, they're going to get louder.
I mean, that's the same thing that happens with anxiety.
Yeah.
The more you try to suppress it, the bigger and scarier it feels, because it's trying to get your attention. Like that makes sense. And in fact, it's a good thing. It's a loving thing. But because same with the kids, like when we turn our attention toward the child, we get down, we inquire, we get curious, we meet their need for comfort, stability, reassurance. Very frequently, the tantrum stops. And when you do that with anxiety, when you resolve the subconscious memory that's been driving it, address the nervous system dysregulation from the stories that you're telling yourself, the body does relax. The alarm no longer needs to scream to get our attention. That's why I push back against the idea of calling it my anxiety, because when you label it as yours, you make it part of that identity. But if it's the anxiety that I'm doing, the anxiety that my body is using to get my attention, then it helps us have a better relationship with our body too. It creates space to change it. So I think the real invitation is don't silence the message, decode it. Anxiety isn't who you are. It's just the body's way of telling you that there's an old wound still waiting to be healed.
Right.
And I think this is a great place to speak about this. I kind of want to clear up confusion that I see everywhere, especially on social media today. People will be saying there's this whole nervous system body regulation, so bottom up approach, right? And I get that they're saying, hey, talking didn't work, so I'm skipping the mind and healing through the body. And I understand why people would think that way. We think that the answer is in the body because it is the body that continues speaking out through the symptoms. But if we will just slow down and look at how the anxiety loop was built, we will find the blueprint how it must be undone. Because here's my thesis. The problem starts in the mind because the mind is where we input, interpret, and store experiences as memories, right? As kids, we assign meaning to what's happening. We just do it. That's our natural thing that we do as kids. I'm not safe. I'm not enough. If I'm seen, then I'll be attacked or I'll be criticized. That meaning gets encoded as subconscious memory. Over time, the body learns to run that program automatically. So we run the story in our mind, and the body has to figure out, because of the neurotransmitters and the chemicals that get released, the body has to respond. And so where it looks like we're just automatically doing anxiety, or that the body's just doing it all by itself. And a lot of people say it's like the body's learned behavior. Yes, but it's because the memories are still being triggered. And eventually the mind's role becomes so undetectable that we really think it's just the body doing it. But the author of the original code is still in the mind. And why many people conclude that the mind approach doesn't work is because most conventional therapies that we've dealt with over the last 50 years deal with the conscious level, right? What they're doing is they're looking to debate thoughts or question thoughts or reframe beliefs, or to kind of white knuckle it and do positive affirmations and do your gratitudes and like think positive thoughts all the time and like reframe your childhood from the thinking brain. But the problem is that the code needs to change, right? If you try to fix a subconscious program with a conscious tool, it's just going to slip back into the same loop. That's why results fade over time. And that's why people have to stay in a practice or a program over and over and over again so that they don't go back into these things. Because after years of repetition, the alarm does train the body, and the body becomes exquisitely fast at launching fight, flight, freeze, fawn patterns, right? So often before we're consciously thinking about it. So which is it, mind or body? I mean, it's both sequentially. The mind authored the loop by creating a memory or a meaning. And then the body had to learn how to respond to the chemicals that get created and released every time we revisit that program, even subconsciously. So we do not have to pull it up consciously for that to happen. To undo it for good, we have to start at the author, the subconscious memory, and then update the compiler or the processor, which is the body, so that new programs run naturally, smoothly.
Yeah, I was just working with a woman, and one of the things that I was describing, because there was a kind of like a bottom-up approach like you're talking about for some specific things. And the conversation was like, you do feel better when you expand your body capacity, but you're still having to like filter and go through the programs that are actually running through your mind into your body. And so the way I kind of look at it is, if we're taking like a computer analogy approach again, so if the mind, people like therapy and this and that, all the conscious work, it didn't work. And well, that's like someone going onto a computer and being like, let me just open a Word doc and tell it how to be programmed differently, right? And you're like, it's not working. So then let's just go into the hardware and let's just put a bigger hard drive in. Let's just like put more memory, more whatever. And guess what? That more memory, more RAM, more whatever can actually make the computer function better. Like it really will function better. But because there's some like maladaptive programs and different things running in there, it's going to eventually catch up to itself. And then you're going to have to continue to expand. Versus if I had just initially stopped trying to write on the Word doc or whatever, and I went into the coding and I went and ripped out the coding that was not helpful, the coding that was like, go here to here to here to here, and then do this program, which is not actually the program we want to do, then it would just streamline. And then you wouldn't have to expand the RAM or the memory or whatever. Like it actually works perfectly the way it was optimally made to work anyways. Yes. So practically, what does that sequence look like to our viewer, YouTube, or our listener?
Yes. Well, let's think of it as a mind first, body always approach. Okay, like with a tiny little asterisk there. The mind first would be, of course, the subconscious. So going where this started in the first place. Access the subconscious scenes where the meaning was written, the way we hold it, the way we see it, hear it, feel it, touch it, taste it, right? And then get into the stories, the interrupted peace, the criticism, the conditional love, those trapped feelings, those feelings of not being safe, right? Then we re-encode the meaning so that the nervous system recognizes that was then, this is now. I'm safe, capable, and allowed to be. So we're not trying to do an intellectual debate. We're not trying to convince the conscious mind that this is so. We are actually backing it up by proof. And this, I will say, this is memory precision work, right? Where your felt sense actually shifts the meaning. And then things really change. Now, I will say, for some people, the body is screaming really, really loudly. And that is going to end up being our first step in the mind change work. It's going to be teaching someone how to interrupt the bother. Because here's the thing, anxiety completely hijacks a person's system. Their body, their thinking brain, everything hijacks. So it takes away their agency. So even though they are doing things to trigger the anxiety loop, they really feel like their body and their mind are against them. Like the anxiety is being done to them. And what's happening there is it really dissociates the mind, the body, and the person's experience, their lived experience. So this person is actually fragmenting. So within the mind change system, luckily we can take this into account, and we can also work with kinesthetic manifestations in the real time. So often when a person realizes they've got a really big body feeling coming up, and we give them the tools and we actually help them do something with it. Like we help them move it. We help them change the shape of it, the quality of it, the color of it, the smell of it, right? We help them get a little bit of movement in there where they've never had any. Mm-hmm. They realize they have some agency. And that helps bring the reality of anxiety into better focus a little bit. It's not the solution, but it is a primer for some people into the relationship between the mind and the body, right? The mind that constantly what ifs and catastrophically thinks, honestly, is actually gifted at the scale of imagination, right? They're very gifted. Now, that gift is being used maladaptively, but it's pretty strong. It's a pretty strong skill nonetheless. Through other mind change tools, we actually begin to retrain that skill to work for the client rather than against. And we do that in the safe haven. We do that in the manifesto, because then the mind begins to, with intention, create awareness and filters for different body predictions. So rather than states of dysregulation, the mind knows how to look for times of peace, calm, regulation, sovereignty. And we all know the more that you look for something, the more you find it. And then again, after this, then the breath work, the movement, the sleep hygiene, the vagal tone work, like the somatics, they stop being Band-Aids and they start being other ways to install and find new body programs.
So it's, kind of going back to what I was saying with the computer analogy, like it's the difference between like your computer, like, oh, it's not running fast enough. And like, let me just get one with a bigger hard drive versus, wow, like everything's running really well, but I'm actually, now I'm capturing a lot more video. I'm capturing a lot more of like good files and good things. So I'm going to upgrade, right? There's a difference in like, I just have to, does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even talk therapy could begin to work better because once the meaning is changed at the root, then our cognitive skills can suddenly hold, right? Mm-hmm. Because they're no longer arguing with a blaring alarm from the body and a subconscious story of being unsafe. The mind and body if we allow it, can be congruent.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where true health lies.
So the order is, what you're saying is to change the meaning that wrote the program. And yes, use brief body tools, right? Only to make the work possible. Then train the body so that the new meaning becomes the default.
Yeah. That's really mind change. We change the mind that keeps pressing the alarm.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're free to do something better instead. And then we can teach the body how to settle back into its natural rhythm and trust that its actual alarm system, fear, is working perfectly and will be there whenever true danger is at hand. That's how you stop doing anxiety. Not by numbing the alarm, not by endlessly battling thoughts, but by updating the subconscious code, like you said, that created the loop in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And then teaching the body how to live without it and how to live better. When the story changes, the chemistry follows.
That's, well, that sounds hopeful. That's what it sounds.
See, I told you it wasn't a grim, sad story.
Okay, so if you've been listening today, which if you're hearing me say this, you are, then, and you know, all of these things we've talked about, if you recognize in yourself that, you know, anything that we've shared, whether it's the constant worry or whether it's the body alarm that never really seemed to turn off, an endless cycle, coping, like whatever it is that you've heard, if there's something that kind of like touched ooh, that rings true for me, then I want you to know, like I said, there is hope. We don't have to keep going down this same loop. We don't have to loop what we did as a child or as a young adult into our continual life. Anxiety isn't who you are. It's just the way that your mind and body have been running the program that was installed early on for whatever various reason. And those loops can be changed.
Yes. And we have many ways to help people, regardless of where they find themselves on this journey. Like some people simply read the book and then bam, they learn the tools and then they run with it, right? We get messages all the time about the book helping people change things they had been stuck in for years or decades that they never thought they could change. For others, it's going to take a little bit more time. Now, not years of talk therapy type of time, but some people need a little bit more walking with.
Okay. And really, like, if someone's like, I just don't know what to do, like, where do I start? Even though we give you ideas and thoughts, that is really what a discovery call is for with Mind Change. And for right now, and again, when this episode is dropping, the fall of 2025, this is something I'm doing right now. I've decided, I'm going to take on all the discovery calls for right now, kind of coming back into that. I didn't do that all the time, and really help people discover what's going to be the best next step for them to figure out what's going to be good. There's a lot of different offerings, and sometimes it can be a little overwhelming of like, do I start here? Do I start there? Do I start there? And so again, this is why we are offering a free 20-minute discovery call to really help answer your questions and then direct you on the next step in your journey with Mind Change. And so really the key is to start somewhere.
Yeah, because the truth is, the longer you keep practicing the anxiety, the stronger the wiring becomes.
Right.
The first moment we begin to change the loop, like really access that subconscious program, the brain starts to rewire in a new direction. And that change can happen for someone today.
Yeah. So again, I'm just going to reiterate, if something on this podcast resonated with you, then set up a discovery call with me. It's easy, it's simple, it's free, and it really could be, as Heather was talking about, it could be the turning point, the moment where anxiety stops running your life, and instead you can start to begin to step into the calm, the clarity, and the connection that we all desire.
Yeah.
Internally and externally.
So we can put the link for discovery calls into the show notes. I would say, listen, don't wait. If you're ready to stop doing anxiety and start living with freedom, we would love to talk with you. And like we said, we've got a lot of different options to help. So thanks for having this little chat with me.
Yeah, not so little, but it was good.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully y'all stuck there with us. We'd love to hear from you. What did you think? What resonated? What are you pushing back on? What's the story? Like, go ahead, talk to us, reach out, leave a comment. Please give us we love those 5-star ratings. Reach out with questions.
I'll also say, like, press that, if you're on YouTube, press that little bell button, because that's going to let you know when the next episode drops and when the next episode drops. Otherwise, you may there's so much on YouTube you may miss. So press that for notifications on, subscribe.
Yes,
follow.
Please ring my bell. Yeah. All right. Anything else?
That's it.
All right. Well, thank all of you for joining us once again on the Mind Change Podcast, where we are changing the world one mind at a time.